you all for turning out. Good to see anyone interested in a rare book that's a contemporary design. This is, as they said, a joint event with the State Library Victoria and Australian Book Design Association. And my job tonight is very simple. I have the pleasure of introducing this very talented trio, and after which we'll have the discussion, at which point I'll start playing middle management to try and keep the creatives on track and on time. And the discussion will be in two parts. An informal discussion like this, we won't be standing at the lectern. The first part one, will be on an aspect of their work that's currently on their minds, and part two will be on a choice of themes in design. And I will also be asking any dumb questions, so you don't have to, though at the end there will be time for questions, dumb or smart, as you like. And if I don't mention it, please note that all three panelists here are multi-award winners, so I won't make a big point about that. Anyway, over to the right with the Caesar haircut and medium beard is Josh Durham, who is also hilariously known as Design by Committee, and he works freelance from Castlemaine. I should be swapping. Sorry. Here we go. So Josh is a book cover specialist, and he's on the spectrum, or as you can see, the full spectrum, from very commercial to literary fiction to poetry to YA and children's books. And his clients include all of the leading publishers in Australia, as well as the independents, and that's because Josh is a very clever man. He has a fantastic ability of always coming up with brilliant ideas, don't know how he does that, and as well he has the graphic and illustrative chops to make it all real. And in the center, we have the entirely beardless Regine Abos, who founded Studio Regina, which is a design consultancy focused on publication design, branding, image making, and art direction. And Regina has two design passions. One is for book design, and she has made a series of very stylish, award-winning educational books out of very complicated material for people like Oxford Uni Press. Beg your pardon, thanks. Hello. Here we go. Beg your pardon. Her other passion is data visualization, or as they say in the trade, data viz. And Regine lectures on this subject at RMIT and Torrens University. And she's so obsessed by data visualization that it spills into her private life. If you go to her blog, which is regineabos.wordpress.com, you see that she has designed infographics on many subjects, all entirely in her spare time, including for different types of bread, the very amusing things publishers say to book designers, a post on Doctor Who as T-shirts, a post on Doctor Who as sneakers, and perhaps most charmingly, all the toys destroyed by Boris the dog. and that's not about British politics. And finally, with the full beard, is Stuart Geddes, who is a graphic designer and an occasional publisher of books and magazines. For example, of his many activities, Stuart is the co-publisher, editor, designer, and the printer of the funky magazine Head Full of Snakes, which is for motorcycle people. You can sort of see it, beard, black helmet, leather jacket, throbbing engine. For his sins, Stuart also works across the street at RMIT, where he's an industry fellow. Isn't that a great title, industry fellow? And lectures in communication design. And by this time next year, he'll be Dr. Geddes. I haven't mentioned his book work yet. I keep forgetting this, sorry. I haven't mentioned his book work yet, but in the past year or so, Stuart has had some very nice acknowledgements for his book designs. He's had a Book of the Year from the ABDA, a Pinnacle from the AGDA, and a pencil from the DNAD. And this will add on to his PhD. Anyway, so let's find out what's on their mind. This is Josh to go first. So Josh, just to kick it off, I'll ask you a question.
Sure.
I've been looking at this cover, and I think this is a very successful delivery of an idea about puberty for girls. So was it tricky for you as a middle-aged bloke to do a book like this?
I'm just going to say knee-deep, but neck-deep in puberty experience, having a teenage 16-year-old daughter at the moment. So I'm not that.
Sorry about that.
I'm not that removed. I'm not that removed from the subject matter. Having said that, I think it was a tricky subject to nail down, as we were suggesting before in our discussion earlier. Puberty is boys and girls, but this cover looks a bit more leaning towards a girl's cover.
I wonder why.
That may be
I'm
something.
not sure if it's very clear in this lighting, but the right-hand bird has a couple of telltale trails of red dripping down from it.
Well, you're kidding me, right?
Okay.
Chong, their legs.
I was kidding.
Oh, good. I've got the printed copy here too, and I realised that the example that I gave to Chong, one of the birds is missing a bit of a goatee. So it does have a little bit more of a blokey feel to it. It's just subtle. But it makes sense when you look at the rejects.
Do you want me to flick to the next slide?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. You can talk about this.
So the first one, I mean, look, I guess they're both similar in the sense that they're both kind of obvious, but the pussy, hairy one, like, as much as that was fun to create, I guess when I was doing it, I had a sense in mind that this wasn't going to get past the marketing department. I persisted with it just for the sake of following it through. I actually think I even had more stuff on there. I had some full-blown zits ready to burst, and so that's the pared back version.
I thought of that as being sweaty rather than pussy. Sweaty and hairy, that reminds me of puberty.
Actually, that's fair enough, yeah. But both of these were rejected, and there was a series of other covers as well that were rejected, and the normal process is, we work through with the client a number of different conceptual ideas in response to a brief, and I went back and had to think about what puberty means, or what I guess what the crux of it is, and I guess for me it's a big period of change. So throwing all of that gross out stuff out the window, I hit upon this idea of trying to illustrate the notion of change, but in a simple and kind of compelling and funny way. And I mocked this up, sent it through to the client, and they were all laughing, apparently. And I went from there, and that was the problem. The job was done, and that's all I can say.
I mean, hop in at any time if you like. I've got a dumb question here. How do you come up with ideas? And how many do you need to come up with in a year?
In a year?
Yes, it's your job.
It's funny, sometimes I troll through, I'm sure if there's other designers in the room, you probably do a similar thing, troll through stuff that's been rejected and see if there's something that you might be able to repurpose. It's all silent, maybe I'm alone in this.
Do you have a huge pile of rejects? Are there many, many, many more rejects than actual?
Oh yeah, of course. I've been thinking about doing a line of tea towels, of printing them all on there to sort of make some money out of them. No, but in terms of idea generation, I guess each job, you're looking at there's so many that I show to the client, but there's also a whole pile of other stuff to get me to a point. So there's a level of exploration and playing around with ideas and to get to the things that I might deem.
I mean, I'm asking really a stupid question because it's sort of a mystery, but honestly, of all the designers that I know, you seem to have the job of getting a new graphic idea every time. So it's not just a question of design. The concept is absolutely key to what you do. So, I just figure if you have lots and lots of rejects, you just must have dozens, if not hundreds of ideas every year. And I can't imagine how you arrive at them all. That's all. It just seems crazy to me.
Well, I think like most designers would agree with this, that you don't really switch off as such. So, if it was to sit down and work out an hourly rate or work out how many hours I'd spent on a job.
No.
16 cents an hour.
Yeah, so, I've got a book here I brought where I know I got the idea when I was having a piss.
Nice.
Very revealing, Josh.
It is very revealing. But it stuck, I think I got an email from the client who had rejected possibly the, 50th concept, I don't know. And you probably can't see it anyway, but...
Higher.
What?
Higher.
Higher.
I can hold it fine.
But I think that the actual subtitle is important too. But it was a book about writing, which is a tricky subject. And I think I had 3 books about writing, different books about writing to come up with ideas for at the one time. And with this one, I was completely stuck. This was the 3rd one, and I'd sort of used all my best ideas on the others and was struggling. And then I just started thinking about the awards badges, and this book has a great subtitle, which is, so effectively the title reads How to Be a Writer, but the badges say the subtitle. So it says, Who Smashes Deadlines, Crushes Editors, and Lives in a Solid Gold Hovercraft. So I've kind of taken the idea of one of the aspects of being a writer, which is to get your work to win awards or to be an award-winning thing. And
So you're having a piss and taking the piss.
pretty much. I'm not even sure how we got onto that now.
Might move on.
To follow
I think so.
follow a previous question of Chong's, like, how many covers do you think you do a year?
What, you mean just the successful ones?
Yeah. Finished work.
I think a
projects.
couple of years I was at peak covers, so I think now, I'm torn between gardening and covers. And, although I think gardening's fantastic for thinking. I'll just say I went through a period of doing probably too much work, and
How much?
I don't know, because I don't just... Obviously, there's been periods where I'm not just doing covers as well. There was a period where I was doing DVD covers as well at the same time, quite a high volume of those, which were, a mixture of sort of re-released Italian pornography and where I had to Photoshop, boobs and heads onto different people's bodies and all sorts of stuff. So in terms of
skills.
that, arguably they're not ideas. That's not particularly creative.
That's data visualization.
It's best.
You should have seen the other guys I was sharing a studio with at the time. Covers per year. At the peak, I think I was probably doing about 60, 70, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. So it's probably like 280 ideas.
Yeah.
You times it by 4 or...
Yeah, maybe an
Yeah.
hour
Maybe
a
8.
day
Yeah.
in the toilet, in the garden. So we'll move on to something nice now with Regine.
Sorry about that.
So, Regine, do you want to tell us a little bit about this little project of yours? These are very inventive covers.
Yeah, sure. So this isn't commercial work, so this is part of my personal blog. So what I do on my blog is I do visual lists of things and just of totally random things. So I was at a yoga retreat in Greece for 3 weeks, and I kind of interviewed all the people who were on that retreat as to what book they were reading. And rather than, and then I designed a cover based on what they told me. So rather than basing it on what the story was about, these covers are based on the relationship of the reader to the story. So for example, My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. So this person had this book on her Kindle, which she just got, and she was just as excited about having a Kindle as she was about the story. So kind of all those kind of really expressive kind of marks are on there. And if you go to the next slide, yeah. Anna Karenina, the person who read this, she actually didn't tell me whether she liked the story or not, or whether or what the story was about. She just kind of went on and on and on about kind of why she actually chose to bring the book. So she didn't tell me anything at all about the book, but just why, and it took her a good 15 minutes to explain why. So that's why the kind of lines are going that way. So yeah, and also this series, this fictional series, I designed right in the middle of kind of doing a really boring project. So I was working at Oxford University Press at that time, and my manager, my ex-manager, who's in the audience, doesn't come in on a Friday. So I actually worked on this on a Friday while she was gone. Hi, Sue. And yeah, so they're designed to be just quick responses. So I just did all of this in a day.
Did the readers ever see any of these?
Yeah, I emailed it to them, and funnily enough, none of them really commented on each of their covers. They commented on how sneaky I was, because I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, really. So yeah, they took the covers as a whole, as a series, not as kind of individual books.
They didn't say whether or not they recognized the book they
No,
read?
no one said anything about it. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
As a matter of, say, design philosophy, if I can be so highfalutin, the approach here you've taken suggests that you could essentially get a brief or talk to the editor and get a picture from them and do the cover, basically translate that into a cover. So in which case, do designers need to read the book at all? Why? It would cut out a lot of work.
Well, you could, but this is a personal project, so there's no sales at risk, or there's no marketing department at risk. So, I could do it, but I would never ever do that. I would have to read something from the book. Nonfiction, you can kind of get away with, reading an introduction and maybe one chapter of it. I've designed an 800-page biology book, and there's no way I'm gonna read all of that. But I think for fiction,
but what can you get from a good brief that you would need to read the book for yourself for?
Well, there's things there that the author might want to portray that maybe the editor or whoever's briefing me might have missed. So
okay, you don't trust them, in other
No.
words. Okay, fair enough. I understand that. One more thing, which is, I really like this kind of stripped back black and blue and just graphic devices.
Did you say you were in Greece? That's why you
yeah,
did it?
yeah. So that's kind of why the blue is there.
course.
The blue and
Picks
white.
up.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, do you think more books out there should have less?
Well, I certainly think some books out there are a bit over-designed. I know sometimes I overthink my covers, and I think, it's kind of like a result of too many people kind of
Designed by committee.
Yeah, designed by committee. And so you tend to overthink things. And this exercise for me, which I did in a day, was kind of really just to pump out ideas. It's kind of like a brain dump. I don't know if you've ever done like brain dumps in design school before. So you have to get 20 ideas in 20 minutes.
I've never done that.
So this is kind of a similar thing.
That
So-
sounds painful.
Well, it's good fun, you know. It kind of just makes you switch off your brain for a bit and just kind of design from your gut, so to speak. So it's
I have
just
poodles to walk for that.
I often get my
Yeah.
students to do that, but I don't do it myself.
Is that as punishment?
No, just for the reason that Reg is saying.
Okay.
That it's good for your brain,
yeah.
but
But
not my
to
brain.
use for the younger brain. Let's see. We have time. We can chat along, but let's just skip over to Stuart's frame here. Stuart, do you want to? Well, actually, I do have a question for you. I remind myself. So, tell us, what are you thinking about book bindings? I mean, should we care about book bindings?
I'd realised that I was going to do something that required two hands here, so I'm.
Do you mean hold that?
No, I'm gonna. Can you hear me?
Do you want me to hold your mic?
Wait, I'll do a little prelude first. But I guess when I was thinking, like, I'm obsessed about all sorts of parts of books, but
You mean the physical object, the mechanics?
not. I mean, that's one of the obsessions, yes. And I guess mostly kind of, well, more and more recently, I've been thinking and have been kind of obsessed about the bindings of books and what they kind of do for a book and for a reader, and I think you can see with just that small kind of variety up there. And here comes my demonstration.
I'll hold it.
Oh yeah, you pointed at me. So basically,
speak
there's a great piece of writing by Robin Kinross of Hyphen Press about, and he talks about it's basically the cornerstone of civilization to be able to read a book and have a cup of tea at the same time, and I think looking here, you can kind of see, and I brought this one in, which is this one in the bottom right corner.
I was going to say you can with a Kindle.
Should we talk about that? I don't think a Kindle is a book.
Fair enough.
Controversial.
I think it's a text, but I don't think it's a book.
It's a machine.
But if you can imagine this, like, just look at that. That's compared to.
Put it up here.
Oh yeah. So
Don't use a glass.
like this. Whenever I reach for my cup of tea, it doesn't work. But I mean, so there's the kind of mechanical quality like that, and the practicality of a book that can lie flat on a table. But then also, I guess there's what we often refer to as the drape of a book, which is a combination of the kind of binding and the kind of paper, where this is a very thick book with very thin paper, and so it has magnificent
Drapes beautifully.
whereas something like this has no drape whatsoever. But with the rounded spine and the section sewing and the flexible glue, you can still have quite a comfortable kind of time reading this, and it's not such a large book that it has to exist on a table rather than in your hands. And the much maligned saddle-stitched or stapled book has very kind of great lay-flat properties and reasonable amount of drape, and can be dressed in a linen kind of cover occasionally as well. So yeah, that I would describe as one of my current obsessions.
I can see that you're really going to get your PhD, no problems. So just to come back to Josh's notion, can you have a book without a binding?
I think you can, absolutely. There's a book I've been describing it as a book-like thing as opposed to a book. But
I know somebody, an author, who describes books he doesn't like as book-shaped objects.
That's good.
I wasn't really suggesting that it's not. I was suggesting that Stuart had said about you can't read. The goal is to be able to read and have a cup of tea at the same time. So the convenience of the Kindle aspect, but whether it's a legitimate book is an argument you can have.
I mean, in terms of the Unbound, I was thinking, when you said Unbound, I was thinking there's a book I did recently that refers back to a quite old book, which is just a collection of unbound signatures in a box. And I think of that as a book in a way that I don't think of a Kindle as a book, or a book on a text on a Kindle as a book. And I think that's got to do with how you can kind of navigate it and how it becomes yours. Like I don't think a text in a Kindle becomes yours in the same way that a book becomes yours, whether it's kind of printed. I guess it's got to be printed.
I'll tell you a story. I mean, the whole e-book thing, which is now gone on for 10 years or whatever, is kind of for our generation sort of perplexing. But I remember years and years ago now, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I was talking to my niece, who was then 14, and she was reading on a device back then, smaller than this, in her hand. And I came across her one day doing this. I said, what are you doing? And she was reading a book, well, a text. And the text was white type on a black background in a space no bigger than the palm of her hand, not counting her fingers. And I said, so you're reading a book? She said, yeah. Why don't you just read the book? And she said, yes, but Mum doesn't mind me all the books I want, and I can download all these for free. Obviously, she was pirating. And I said, well, do you, professionally, I asked her, do you prefer a real book or this book, this device thing? And she said, well, I like books, she said, but I get the same feeling. So, and she was already 14 then, and kids who grew up with these damn things, they're just going to get the same feeling, aren't they? Stitched or not stitched, bound or not bound, signatured or not signatured.
Yeah, I mean, as certain as I sounded before, I'm not certain. I mean, I think the thing that I am certain about is that there's certain kinds of books that we don't need to print anymore, certainly. Like I don't think we don't, and we shouldn't print the yellow pages and the white pages, and
but they're really great for printers with the plates, like art printers. Etchings. They're great for wiping etching plates. No, sorry, go on. There's just things that databases and screens do better than books, but there's things that books do better than databases and screens, and whether that sounds like I'm privileging the art book over the novel, it sort of probably sounds like that. That's how it sounds, Stuart.
But again, I'm not. Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about.
You do. You just have to admit to your prejudices. I think it's okay. I think
Exactly.
It's okay to have prejudices, as long as you're not afraid of them. But anyway, that's part one. We could go on, but let's see how we go with part two, which is this. Did you like part one? Was that okay? Shall we carry on like that? We'll go in the same order again. Josh, this is your first of 3 slides.
Okay.
Have a go. Talk.
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry, just getting around to it. I decided to talk about, I guess, going back to that puberty cover, humour and wit in cover design. I guess for me, the need to come up with ideas, wit and humour is something that feels like another tool in the kit bag, and something that I could look to in order to find a solution for a cover. There's 3 different examples of it here, although I'm not convinced that the Lolita one is funny. It's funny when you see it, and you get the joke, but I also think it's disturbing at the same time.
Lolita is disturbing a bit.
It is. It's a disturbing book, but just the perspective, because I see myself as Humbert.
Oh no!
No, I don't. Sorry, I don't see myself as him, but I'm imagining that perspective, and he's on the bed from there. But the brilliance of that is I keep looking at it and thinking, how the hell did he come up with that?
Maybe he was lying on the bed like Humbert.
I think he was. Because there's so many covers have been done for Lolita, but that is out of the box in terms of a different angle. I don't know what you guys think.
I love your sex drive, so to speak.
That's one that I did a few years ago, and it was very, very quickly one of those really quick concepts. But as I suggested to Chong earlier, it's a difficult subject matter to treat with. I guess humour is appropriate, but it's got to be tasteful. And I suggested to Chong earlier that this is about not getting wet as such, being like a raincoat and stitched up, but that's kind of a bit off.
No comment.
No comment, sorry. I don't know what to say about that sex drive. It's just one of those ones where I did it very quickly and I sent it through to the client and they just went, yeah, we love it. Great. And I didn't think it was going to get through. The lonely polygamist manages to do 2 things at once, which is kind of one of those nice...
I would suggest a polygamist manages to do several things at once.
Fair enough. I guess the rings get across the polygamous idea, but the reddening of that finger gets across the sort of anxiety and emotional difficulties, perhaps, of this guy or woman's life.
Well, they were just single ladies and they're putting a ring on it.
Yeah.
Next
slide. Now, see, nobody can argue with that Cheers one. And I think humour has to... humour is I think it's a tricky thing to utilise because it could just fall flat. But if there's a level of universality about it, and I think most people can put themselves in that position of the guy on the horse, it reads straight away and it seems intuitive and natural, so it doesn't feel like they're playing for laughs. It's just what it is. The Tina Fey one, I was going to look at some of my books as well while I was discussing these, but the playing with scale there is what makes that funny. And I guess when I said before about having tools in the toolkit in terms of humour, there's lots of different approaches you can take to it. One being playing with scale, another with whimsy, or like I suggested for the polygamist, the kind of pulling 2 ideas together. The general theory of love, I just think that's just lovely. So I don't know. It's more whimsical and beautiful, but It's just a lovely concept and a unique interpretation of the subject matter, which is...
I think it looks a bit wooden. Okay.
So bad I'm not responding. How to See, once again, to how see, depending on how you want to read it, is a neat little joke which I think Regine might be able to appreciate. Yeah, or would drive you bananas. But very, very clever, simple idea. I mean, it's so, I don't know, any of you guys know what typeface that is? It looks...
Farm painter or
Yeah, everything is stripped right back so that the concept itself is sort of given the full power. Creativity in industry, I don't know, once again, it's distilling a clever idea down into something compelling. And the one on the end, I found that when I was having a look at cover examples and thought it was funny, but the title actually does all of the work, the design side of it.
I had to read it twice. It's quite wicked.
I'm not even sure if it's a real book. The actual object was a hardback book, and I've cropped it when I supplied it to you as an image. So, and you know, there's a booky texture on it, but I can't believe that someone published it.
Do you have a process to get to humour, or like a range of, like you were talking about the toolkit? Like, do you have like a range of, like, I'll try out scale and I'll try out whimsy? Like, do you programmatize it like that, or do you just feel your way to it?
I think it is a feel thing. I think, for example, like this cover, which is Mark Latham, and I made him into a giant, almost sort of treading all over Canberra. You know, the idea came out of his personality more than anything.
He's
I think there's just waste on the back there. It's just like a bomb site. So that's using scale for humour, or a contrast of scale.
I can't believe he approved that cover.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure how much of a hand he had. This was before he went full ballistic, though. This is sort of maybe about 3 or 4 years ago now. Yeah. But some things like this is kind of just an obvious play on the title more than anything. So the idea comes straight out of that. It's about a waitress, the world's worst waitress apparently, but she talks about her experiences, and it's not so much about her being a bad waitress as all the other bad characters she's working with.
Just describe it. Let me describe it. Just show it to the crowd. It's a fork with the prongs pulled back, except for the middle prong, which looks a bit like a middle finger.
Which isn't, a massively original idea or anything, but it works for this. I will say, because I've held up 2 non-fiction books, but in terms of this sort of approach, it does really, and I think Regine mentioned it before, it does lend itself to non-fiction titles more than fiction, which demands a bit of an emotional response as well.
So comedy for non-fiction and tragedy for literary fiction.
A bit, yeah.
Oh well. We'll move on. Here we go. Regine, give us the works.
So having worked in educational publishing for quite a long time, and given also my interest in data visualization, an interest of mine is table of contents of books, specifically for cookbooks. And because if you think about it, a cookbook, when you strip back all the kind of the travel journals, the kind of the history or the autobiographical nature of it is essentially a piece of instructional design. So
Can I just
Yeah.
interrupt you and say that you and Stuart are really book nerds?
thank you.
Carry on.
Table of contents is like my favorite page to design in a book.
I know, right? So I love contents pages. So I judge a book not only by its cover, but by its contents pages as well. And this one in particular, I actually bought specifically because it had a good contents page,
Wow,
because it was
good to know.
arranged by color. So this book here is called Rainbow Tarts. And yeah, as I mentioned, I bought this solely because the table of contents was arranged by color.
Do you want Stuart to hold it up for you?
Sorry, that's all right. So that's it there, and that's the table of contents there, and yeah. So the next one. So I was actually going to say. So I've noticed that more and more table of contents are getting more and more illustrated, or getting more visually, designed, not just as straightforward lists. This one is from the Huxtaberger book, which was published, I think, last year by Hardy Grant.
You need to open this one.
Yeah, okay. There you go. So instead of...
Do it again.
Instead of end papers...
As long as the crowd makes the same noise again.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, so instead of end papers, they designed the it's kind of like a half contents page. So it's kind of like a summary of the actual contents page, which is designed as a table, like a chemistry periodic table. So, sorry. So, yeah. So that's that there. And I think it's quite a brilliant piece of information design, because even the line work kind of denotes different categories. So like the dotted work, the dotted lines, for example, represent the basic elements of a burger, and the solid lines, denote other burgers. So it's arranged really well according to category.
The project manager of this book told me that the fold-out cost was that he couldn't tell me. It was so painful.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, because he told me that it was kind of, they just met budget. Like, so it was kind of...
I think he lied. But do you think that tables of contents can be too interesting?
Yeah, sometimes I think they can be over-designed if they kind of impede the actual navigability of a document. So sometimes I find them, sometimes, designers can get a bit too gimmicky. But I think in this case, because it's such a quirky book, I think it kind of, it makes sense in this
I just look at the
context.
pictures in the cookbooks anyway.
And this one is vegetables from an Italian garden. So I think this is quite an elegant solution. So,
Do you
Yeah.
need Stuart to help again?
so yeah, all right. So each of the recipes are arranged according to season, and each season has been assigned a particular color. And the ribbons correspond to that color. And if you swap the book, hold the book that way, so you can see some of the books have actually, some of the pages have actually been trimmed in, so the color kind of shows through. So one thing I'm really interested in is kind of navigability of a book, and I think that kind of works really well.
Yeah, no, it's really good.
And it's such a clean, kind of simple design.
That's what publishers say to designers.
I know.
Can we have it clean and fresh?
Exactly. Yeah, that's one of the things that publishers keep saying in their briefs, kind of keep it fresh and simple, but simple.
Can I ask both of you, if you're designing a bigger full book like this, do you design it in a, like, you do the contents first and then you start on the first chapter, or is it a very mixed up,
Organic.
organic approach?
Biodynamic.
I think it's about making up kind of what the system is that's going to house everything, and then and then, but it's kind of, for me, it's often kind of making a thing that's, making a system that's a game, you know, like it's got the content in mind, and it's got the reader in mind, and it's got me in mind as the person who has to kind of play it out, and then you just sort of
Is it
play
going
it
to work,
out
or
over
is it
however many
feasible?
pages.
Yeah.
But then, you know, for me also, like always the contents and the cover come sort of second last and last, generally.
No, I tend to work the opposite, actually. I work on the contents first
I'm
because
glad I asked.
well, because it is a list, and I just like lists and giving order to things. So I usually start with the table of contents and then work backwards.
I was thinking about the table of contents as having to be a kind of diagram of the
Yeah, it's
Of
kind
the
of like
book.
your blueprint for the entire book. So it kind
blueprint
of
or
makes
diagram.
sense.
That's good.
Yeah.
Regine
So it kind of
makes
makes
a
sense.
blueprint first, and you make it last.
Ah.
Oh, interesting.
There you go.
Maybe it's a boy-girl thing.
Maybe. So, well, this being Rare Book Week, so last week we went through the Rare Book archives, and it was kind of like being let loose in like being a kid in a candy store. So I found all these amazing like old books from cookbooks, and the one on the right, my right, is Mrs. Mcclurkin. It's from 1898. It's called Mrs. Mcclurkin's Cookery book, and I think the subtitle is something. It's really colonial, something like recipes specially formulated for Australia. And as you can see here, it's the table of contents is pretty much a straightforward list. All the text is kind of set in big blocks in large paragraphs. And while it is kind of it says something about the technology at that time, but if you contrast it now to cookbooks, where there's large open spaces, and it's kind of a testament to how short our attention spans are. Whereas before, you'd have to read through paragraphs and paragraphs of cooking instructions, whereas now it has to have a pretty picture, or it has to be in a numbered list. So we kind of
Can I interrupt again?
Yeah.
I'm just distracted. When was this book published?
1898.
So they had ginger then. The recipe has 2 large pieces of ginger. That's amazing. I thought they didn't come in until, whenever it was.
Well, it is specifically for Australia, so they must have grown ginger up north or something
Okay.
in the tropics. Yeah, and so this other slide on the left, so this one's from 1943. I think it's got, the title of the book is called Australian Cookery Today. And what it is, it's a photograph of a fallen pie crust. And I really love the caption of this as well, because it says, this is a fallen pie crust. Even experienced cooks make pies that collapse. A common cause is too much or too little fruit or meat in the dish. And see pages 67 to 68 for other explanations. So I think it's quite cute how it's really reassuring, and how it says that it's okay to fail, But cookbooks these days, everything has to be perfect. And even the messy shots are styled to be perfect.
Yeah, it's
Whereas
true.
this, like no publisher would probably be caught dead, kind of, publishing a photograph of a fallen pie crust.
Maybe you can start a trend.
Maybe. Yeah,
I'd buy a book with cookery failures. Yeah, it'd be easy.
Yeah. That'd be
That's great. Okay, we'll just trundle along. Stuart, you have 3 slides. Go for it.
Oh, cool. I wanted to sort of flick back and forth with these actually a little bit.
It's yours.
Oh, is it? Okay, cool. So I guess what I wanted to point to with these slides was something that I do quite a lot and I'm quite interested in, and so I see in other things a lot, and that's looking at things that have a kind of really solid historical kind of basis, and that something new kind of comes out of that. And so I guess I started here with with Ways of Seeing, which is designed by Richard Hollis. Well, actually, they describe it as being made by 5 people, one of whom was John Berger, and one of whom was Richard Hollis, the designer, and there were 3 others. But essentially, what I kind of really, I think what was so influential about this book was that it came in the wake of, so this was 74, 72, 74, something like that. And it came in the wake of Mcclurkin Medium as the Massage, and was sort of at the tail end of this moment of radical kind of paperbacks largely in the UK. But what this does with it is it's way less pyrotechnic. It's much more. It really serves the kind of text and the reader, and they talk about it being like what they were trying to do with the design of the book was to make it like the experience of watching television. And so the heavy text with the inset images was all about.
Because this was a television series too, wasn't it?
It came after
So it's
the Ways of Seeing television.
the book of the TV.
It was. They thought about it as being a kind of development of the TV series, and so it used a lot of those ideas, but then kind of took them further and did other things with them in book form. But I think so that in a way was my kind of starting point, and then this book, which I think is so kind of clearly influenced by it, to my eyes anyway, has the wonderful title of A Blow-by-Blow Account of Stone Carving in Oxford, which it's an exhibition catalogue designed by Wayne Daly and Claire Lyon, and I think it's so clearly comes from Ways of Seeing in terms of the kind of act. I always kind of mix these words together, but like there's a sort of casual activeness to these pages where the way the text and the images are kind of working together is not too systematic, but and so it kind of it manages to do what it needs to do for the text and for the reader, and also be a kind of lively experience, like. Anyway, then the third one is again something that's kind of really steeped in kind of history and research and collaboration, and becomes a kind of really virtuosic piece of typesetting.
I was trying to work out what this was. What is it? Is it a poetry volume?
It's so it's based on, like, the text is a Gertrude Stein play from the 20s.
Explains everything.
But then the typesetting is modelled off this kind of Herbert Bayer system of typesetting, and then all of the forms are made by the graphic designer in collaboration with the artist, and they were part of a mural that was a part of a work, but then they were also a set of objects that were used on a table in a performative installation, and then the Gertrude Stein play was about these works on a table, and so it kind of has this sort of circularity.
I love the way it looks, but I try to read it and it makes no sense to me whatsoever.
It's also like it's this lovely slim little thing. It's only kind of the size of that. It's a little kind of pocket book, but it's also only sort of 96 pages, so rather than 300 and so. And so it's like this really lovely kind of slim volume, and if you read it, it's really readable, like as a book.
I'll take your word for it.
Sure.
Will it work in Kindle? Do you need to have facing pages?
Do you what?
Do you need to have facing pages?
I don't think it comes in Kindle.
Okay.
Anyway, there's a lively connection between these three that.
But how about, would you have fiction books with images in it? Obviously, this is sort of non-fiction. All three of these, sort of, kind of. A play is a fiction, I guess.
I mean, I think there's a bit of there is a history of that. Like, I think
Illustrated
you were in
bookplates.
fact telling me about W.G. Sebald and Austerlitz
That's right.
a little while ago, and then there's the author that I mentioned way earlier with the box of unbound sections was a British writer of this sort of 60s and early 70s called B.S. Johnson, and he was very experimental in the way that his books were kind of formatted, not so much with images, but with columns and holes cut in pages and well, you know, all sorts of kind of different techniques. And then in the poetry space, there's you know, obviously things like concrete poetry.
No, I thought that was what the Gertrude Stein book was.
Oh right, yeah. And so I think, you know, there's.
But can you just go back to the Berger book, which I reread recently. And I was in the Ian Potter Museum earlier today, and they still have it on sale, which is incredible after all this time. But it works brilliantly because the pictures are necessary for the text to work, but the pictures don't work without the text. So it is a case where it is an illustrated book. They're totally interdependent.
You mean you don't think it works in the image only sections?
No. Because when I got to a page where the text is not clearly referring to it, I have to look for the bit in the text where it does refer, and then what he says then makes sense of the picture. Because the reproductions in this book are so bad that they're only there for the purpose of giving you a rough idea of the thing he's talking about. It's just a schema, you know.
I think I don't know. I think there's a really lovely kind of looseness to the way you interpret those. I don't think it's.
I mean, the crappiness is part of the interesting texture.
I mean the image only kind of essays. And I think they're not explicit in the same way that the text and image like essays are. So for those who haven't, like it's a collection of basically 7 essays, 3 of which are image only essays. So on the bottom row there, the 2 middle ones are part of one of those image only kind of essays.
Yeah, but you have to be set up for that to work.
It says that in page 1 of the book.
Okay.
You know.
Whatever.
But yeah, whether it's meant to be kind of explicit in the same way as the other essays are, I don't imagine it is. And in fact, they say, again, like I reread the introduction to the thing again this afternoon, and it talks about them raising as many questions as they.
Sure, but here's the deal. I mean, this is going totally off the book topic, but you know, Berger was a very particular ideological art critic. And his whole thing was having the picture to talk about. He couldn't trust you to look at the picture. You needed him to guide you, so it'd be pointless without his words, because that's really how it's got to work. That was his job.
And so maybe in collaboration with these other 4 people,
they loosened him up.
prized him away from that idea.
Okay. Oh, look, exactly on time, according to our program guide, 7:02. Give our talent a hand, please.